a few years back, again, not that long ago, I think it was a place in Florida. They were all using the same computer, and it was a water plant, the filtration system, right, for the city. And somebody hacked into that. They were using a really old version of the software. It was a simple password. They all did that. And it just happened that somebody checked on it and noticed that someone had tapped in from outside and had released like a mass amount of chemical into, or was planning to release, like it was scheduled to get released into the water system that would have killed millions of people.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Pontau. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Natalie Berthe. Natalie is an accomplished business growth strategist and founder coach whose unique blend of expertise spans over 3 decades in various roles such as CEO, consultant, and fractional COO. With a strong focus on empowering startups and advising founders, she excels in transforming nebulous business ideas into profitable ventures, all while emphasizing authenticity, strategic problem solving, and purposeful leadership. Her no-nonsense approach fosters an environment where clients are challenged to achieve their goals without the cushion of platitudes, promoting meaningful growth and positive societal impact. Equipped with an MBA and an MA in international communication, Natalie has also founded several nonprofit organizations and has actively engaged diverse stakeholders in collaborative efforts for social good. Congrats on promoting meaningful growth and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you.
So one of the things I'm fascinated by that you help people with is the cybersecurity, because that's obviously with what's going on today in business. If you're not secured and on the cyber front, you're completely vulnerable to a ton of huge issues that can totally broadside of business. But it also amazes me how so many companies don't take it seriously. So why are so many companies bad at securing, as you call it, their shiitake?
Quite simply because it depends on the size of the company, right? So if we're talking Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, they're going to be a lot more secure because there's a lot of resources that they can put in that direction. The bigger problem for startups, for smaller companies that are in that growth stage, is that there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what cybersecurity is. We were taught for, it's really started coming in the forefront maybe in the last 2 to 3 decades, especially in the last maybe 10 or 15 years. And for the longest time, we were told it was complicated. It was too technical for us to understand. It was, the gatekeepers, as I like to refer to them, just make it sound a whole lot more complicated than it really is. And so everyone assumes that it is too expensive and too technical, and they'd rather spend their money on other things, when in fact, we're still looking at 90% of all breaches are directly related to what we call the human element. It is what people do. And so until we have this fundamental shift, both in business and in our personal lives, it is going to constantly be a problem. And now with AI and everything that happens, it's going to even blow up even more. And a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money and get hurt because of it.
Yeah, it seems like and I have to admit, most of my familiarity with this stuff comes from watching like Mr. Robot, which apparently is really accurate about how they go about hacking. But so much of what people do is, if you're trying to get into a system, the often easiest way to get in is just to focus on a person, not a piece of technology or not a login. So if you can get a person to make a mistake,
that's right,
then that's how you get in, way easier than technically. So it seems like for businesses, cybersecurity is not a tech investment. It's more of a training and like skills building exercise or investment in their team. And that also, I think, might help in or simplifying how people perceive cybersecurity was sort of a problem, because it's not this obtuse, complex technical thing. It's just making sure your people aren't making mistakes and being careless.
Yeah. So I always like to say that what the emphasis in the cybersecurity world is that we're trying to put a technological solution, which is over something that is fundamentally a human problem. And technology only goes so far, because if you've got someone, I think some people would disagree with me, but I think a lot of people in the industry would agree with me that, technology only brings us so far because between human ingenuity and human stupidity, someone's going to break it, right? Like that just happens. And that's not a judgment call on the technology itself, but just a fact. And yes, it is fundamentally a people problem. The problem, I think, with with some of the companies that offer like these little mini trainings or whatever, is we treat people dumb, and these trainings are boring. I had a friend who is a nurse, and she actually is she works on call. So she does calls for a company that when people have questions, they call in. And she said, you would have died. She said, I had an hour-long training, and more than 45 minutes of it was completely irrelevant to what I do. Make sure you don't hold the door open. All of us in this company don't work inside the office. Make sure you don't put your password, right, on your computer so your coworkers can see it. We're all working from home, and yet none of them have computers or, secure connections. And this is medical information, right? None of them have secure connections that are, when I have a friend who works for the World Bank. I live in DC, so it's not an unusual thing. In order for her to log on, it has to be through an intranet, right? She's got a computer from work, and then the work has an intranet that she has to tap into. She can't tap into my Wi-Fi when she's at my house. So, and I think when people sit there, they get another one's like, use a complex password. And everyone's like, oh my God, like, why do we have to do this again? And I think we are treating people like they're stupid, and it is the same information, and we're talking to them in the same way, and it's not working because we are not explaining the things that you can do and helping them to finally understand how these things can work and what to look out for. You talk about, when you started that piece, I was thinking of a couple of years ago, there were both Uber and Cloudflare, huge, both of them massive companies, both got attempted hacking. One of them, Cloudflare, has a system so that if you want to log onto your system, you actually have, I think it's a YubiKey. It's literally, you had to have a password and a physical key in order to log into the system. That wasn't a problem, right? And so when someone was trying to get the information or get someone to what's called, phishing or smishing in this case, where they were sending them codes and trying to get the code or something like that, it didn't work because you didn't have the second piece, which was a physical key. Then you have someone in LastPass, right about the same time, had a massive breach. And when they dug deeper, somebody accessed their account from home, which was not as secure. And that's how, the hackers got into the system. On the other hand, you have Uber, who had a massive data breach, which people don't even realize. And it was actually someone who wasn't in there to try to destroy it, but they were trying to see how secure it was. It was probably closer to a white hat hacker versus a black hat. Black hat wants to steal all your information, gray, morally gray. And of course, white are doing it to try to find where the problems are. And the reason we know it was probably a white hat hacker is because they left a big message saying, hey, I got in and this is all that's going on. And they didn't steal any information. The problem is when they got in, whoever set up the Uber system had a single master key that unlocked absolutely everything. So once they logged into that and they were able to find the key, which was very simple, you know, it's like that person had access to absolutely everything, including the Slack channels, everyone's emails, credit card information, like all of it was all available there. And then you have situations that are like, this is why we have to all be paying attention and asking questions. A few years back, again, not that long ago, I think it was a place in Florida, they were all using the same computer, and it was a water plant, the filtration system, right, for the city. And somebody hacked into that. They were using a really old version of the software. It was a simple password. They all did that. And it just happened that somebody checked on it and noticed that someone had tapped in from outside and had released like a mass amount of chemical into, or was planning to release, like it was scheduled to get released into the water system that would have killed millions of people, right? Like, so it is a problem all over. And someone somewhere along the way should have been throwing a fit going, why are we all using the same password? Why are we all using the system that is literally 10 years old? You know, they don't update. You know, I always like to say, like, oh gosh, why is Google forcing me to update my browser? Why is Microsoft forcing me to update? They're not updating so you can get another color of blue. They're updating because there's a vulnerability, right? And then people get all mad about that. But I'm sorry, I could go about this all day. Like I jumped into this because many people had problems, and I was like, "What are you not understanding?" So
yeah, I can tell you care about this. So what is that when you're working with companies? What are some examples of how when you've come in and like what's the way you help them educate, or what do you like focus on that makes a difference? Because obviously the trainings were like 45 minutes of the hour-long thing is irrelevant, and how the people don't know what to look for, what to ask. So what's your approach, and how do you help your clients avoid this it sounds like the training is more about here's what to look for, here's what to ask, or here's like the systems or habits you need to build as a workforce, and for each person in their specific roles. Like, here's the red flags to look for. What's kind of the approach that helps secure a business's data more effectively than what it sounds like most organizations are using?
So I would say, you know, when I don't teach the exact same thing every single time, because I want people to apply whatever it is that I'm about to teach them. I want them to understand in real time and make it very applicable to what they do. And so if I'm working with someone in the medical field, we would talk about, that we have the HIPAA laws, but do you understand these other things? And let me explain to you why this is a really popular place for people to steal information and what they're going to do with that information. Or when I talk to financial planners, we're going to talk about how anything to do with finance is like, I don't know, it's like 10 times more likely, more popular for hackers, right? Because, hey, money's money. And at the end of the day, that's all that is, right? There's a handful of people who are trying to build up their name, but they're doing it because they want money. And so one of the first things we have to do is say, look, I'm not going to sit there and explain to you that you need to make sure you have different passwords. Like, this. I'm going to explain. My goal is always to help them develop the critical thinking skills as it relates to their digital world. And I think that that's really the difference, because it's a lot more engaging. If I finish a training, which happens all the time, but when I finish a training and people come back to me and they say, oh my God, I am terrified, but I'm feeling empowered. I'm like, did my job, right? I want you to be scared, but I want you to understand that you can fix a lot of what's going on in there, right? You may not be the person in the back end. The IT folks have their own issues that they need to work out with. One of which, frankly, is that a lot of IT people pretend they know a hell of a lot more about cybersecurity than they actually do. You know, and I'm like, no shade, but let's not like act like you think that that's all there is, because it's not. When we're talking about the human behavior side, we want people to feel empowered. We want people to be scared. We want people to be paranoid while they're going out there. Understand that there is no such thing as a target that's too small. And this is kind of a weird analogy, but like I say, you know what? You could, like, your choice to get across the city, you have multiple choices. You could take the bus. You could buy a Kia and drive to work. You could be buying a Maybach or a Rolls Royce, right? All of those ultimately are transportation systems, but it's based on your goals, your financial resources, like a bunch of whatever the reason is that you pick the thing that you pick. And so just like there are all these other choices, and there are people who fit each of these categories, that is the same for hackers. The number of people who I hear, especially business owners, which drives me absolutely nuts. Well, my business isn't big enough, or I'm not interesting enough, or we don't do anything that I really have to worry about. Try that when one of your clients gets hacked, and then come back to me, and it comes back through you, right? I worked with somebody who that happened, and they're like, they said that, I don't believe it, but they said that it was one of my employees. And I looked at her and I said, it may not have been her, but it was clearly through her account. Right. And I like, you can't argue that point, because that is just, you can actually see that. That's a technical thing. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to fix to make sure that that doesn't happen again? And so I think the key to doing a really good training is to stop people, is to really kind of hit them where they're at, explain to them, not only, I also allow people to ask a lot of questions, which allows people to engage a lot more, and makes it a lot more interesting for everyone involved. But I always start with this, let me explain to you what's going on in your area, in your field, your industry. Then let me explain to you what's going on in the world. And so, without getting too much into politics, but the fact that Homeland Security, with our current administration, has pulled a ton of resources away from cybersecurity to focus on immigration. And that has meant that we are a lot more vulnerable than we were beforehand. And that's just a fact, right? And so now, what additional things do you need to do in your department, in your company, at home? These are habits that we should be teaching our kids. People are like, oh, kids are just too, so the fun fact, right? I have 3 kids. And I remember when Minecraft first came out, right, a gazillion years ago, there were no instructions. There were no videos on how to do this stuff. There wasn't a tutorial on how to use it. Was just released to the world. It was a free game, and the kids figured it out. Children are not dumb. They figure stuff out. So you teach them young, you teach them how to do the things, and and especially in a generation that is so comfortable with a digital life, they are actually more, I can get into that whole thing, the generation thing, more susceptible to it as well. So this should be something that we talk about all the time, with just so you understand what you're looking for, and what you should be paying attention to.
And I think, one of the key things is that those critical thinking skills, and teach people, here's how to cross the street safely. And it's
That's right.
Look for threats and then cross when you know it's safe. But there's no real standardized, here's the safe way to navigate the internet, or exist online, or have a presence online. And I think there's, the understanding, kind of the safety in a digital setting for individuals and organizations is, and those critical thinking skills of like just pausing to like ask yourself, is this like a legit link, or like is this real, or like what is this gonna, like a threat? Should I be doing this? Should I click on this link? Should I open this thing? That sort of, those processes are something I think, like you said, when you help people apply it to their situation and make it personal, and again, not treat them like an idiot. I think those are all great tips that you can train people on how to be safer online, and that in turn increases the security of themselves and their organizations they work for, because they're not basically like leaving the side door open digitally for people to come in and do dastardly things to the digital presences of these companies and for people's lives. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Natalie. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, leave a like, review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Natalie, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.
Thank you.